Put that on and pause it.
Yep. You can go.
Okay, well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to those who were here before, and welcome to any newcomers. Great. Today, we're going to be discussing some preliminary information on purification, then moving on to becoming the observer, and continue with discussing the importance of meditation. The overview, of course, the overview of the entire course, of course, is Journey of the Soul and what takes place during the Journey of the Soul. So in today's installment, we'll be talking about becoming the observer and about meditation as part of the process. Before I begin, I want to restate several key themes regarding the soul's spiritual journey. One of them being merging the threefold personality. And that again is made up of the mental, emotional, astral, and the physical etheric. And I'll go into more of what the Constitution of Man is in December's talk, but for now we're just calling it the threefold personality. And it works with the soul to create personality integration. So you integrate with the soul in your consciousness, and you have an at-one-ment ultimately that takes place. Also, another key theme is about purification, and the astral mental bodies is ongoing. I'll be getting more into that in this talk here, more detail. And that the purification allows for clear seeing, expansions of awareness and recognitions. This process is about deepening a soul connection through meditation. While this is happening, the buddhi, which is part of the higher aspect of ourself, known as on the plane of the intuition, while this is happening, the buddhi is replacing the lower astral or emotional matter, which is part of your emotional makeup or your body, and the energies to offset glamour and illusion. Glamour is illusion in the astral body. And simply overview these concepts that I'm talking about allow you to see yourself as you are and know your purpose. They clear away the cobwebs in consciousness, so to speak, anything that blocks you from clear seeing, and you'll ultimately know the purpose of service. And as a reminder, I'll be referencing handouts in this class. For this class, there are two new handouts, one called Stages of Meditation, which I'll get into later in this talk, and also with techniques for working in consciousness, also in this talk. These two handouts will be posted in, well, they'll be on the Makara website after today's presentation, but they'll be available in the chat a little bit later in this talk. And let's see, you should already have available to you the terminology. What is it called? Well, it's titled Terminology. I'm trying to remember the exact title.
Terminology affirmations.
Terminology and concepts. Yes. Okay. There we go. And there's also another handout too called the stages of excuse me. I'm just trying to get the exact title. I gave these on the Human Constitution or the Seven Planes. Okay. Anyhow, let's move on. Purification is ongoing. We're reminded that purification is ongoing and necessary process that begins during the probationary path, and it continues for the disciple and the initiate up through the higher initiations. Treading the path is an exact science and requires all limitations to be overcome in order to progress on the path. Purification is about purifying the mind and the astral body, the emotional astral body, of anything that is not of the soul's nature and keeps you from experiencing the full integration with the soul. The teachings which I'm imparting from the writings of Alice Bailey and Dwal Kul, the Tibetan master, are not just about purification techniques and information about taming the lower astral and mental bodies. This information is about the transformative power of the soul that shocks the aspirant or disciple into action. I provide technical knowledge, but in the end, it is your own intuition that must be awakened to guide you in this process. During the time of probation and discipleship, you are learning self-control over your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, which will pave the way towards preparation of greater expansions of consciousness and service. When you purify your thoughts and emotional bodies, you are actually making them better receptors for the soul light. We note that purification also depends on several things. Your own willingness and commitment to expanding your awareness is key. Our task is not to get rid of these energies or judge them per se, but acknowledge they are limiting factors in expanding your spiritual work. These can be addressed by applying mental techniques to overcome and transform the energies into something more life-giving. Hindrances and obstacles. Major concept to grasp about purification is that you are progressing from one state of awareness to a higher one. And this is achieved by overcoming the hindrances present at each stage. This is accomplished through the science of purification. Directly dealing with your own personal obstacles and hindrances is in reality dealing with some or most of your most overt dark thoughts. On the path of liberation, each of us personally and individually must take responsibility and deal with the lower thoughts and feelings that keep us separated from each other and from our own souls. These thoughts and feelings can be either conscious or unconscious. For this subject of dealing with your dark thoughts, I am recommending that you don't repress your dark side, but learn to transform it. This means that you should stand back in consciousness, learn to see your dark thoughts or dark thought forms with dispassion. Using dispassion will take the charge off the thought forms. Keep in mind that thought forms and desires are nothing more than energy and can be transformed. The four most limiting energies of the dark side that need to be overcome are anger. This poisons the mind and blocks the expression of love from the soul. This energy must be mastered and contained before moving on to higher levels of consciousness. Energy of anger or ill will or harmfulness will cripple your service to others and inhibit your progress on the path. Another of the limiting factors is selfishness, the me-only consciousness. This energy causes the individual to do whatever he sees fit and is expressing a me-only awareness. This can be a passive-aggressive attitude, deception, lying, lack of kindness or compassion. I'm in it for me, my family, my nation, or my race. This blocks out any expression of the soul and separates the individual from others. Addressing this energy is about transforming your own personal will into an expression of the divine will. The third of the limitations or hindrances to overcome is fear and worry. Fear has two possible expressions. Fear can paralyze the spiritual seeker from moving forward, or two, it can be a motivator when courage in combination with consciously knowing what needs to happen in the moment is present. This can involve an instinctual or strong soul presence. The last hindrance to overcome, the last major one at least, is called unbalanced desire. In its most basic form, unbalanced desire is I want this energy, and works with the energy of selfishness and expressing one's own will. When unbalanced, it can cause the individual to have dysfunctional behavior in the form of eating disorders, drinking, drug abuse, theft, gambling, and misapplied sexual energy, or cause the person to have overly aggressive feelings. Any of these four energies can block soul expression. Other hindrances and obstacles to overcome in the beginning or intermediate stages of the spiritual path. You can have restlessness, like dealing with the monkey mind chatter. You could have carelessness, a sense of carelessness, not thinking or being mindful of your environment, laziness, lack of discipline, and apathy or boredom. So by observing and detaching from these hindrances requires moral strength as a predominant requirement to change your character and ask why you are on the path. Later in this talk, I'll spend some time talking about techniques to overcome these limitations. Advanced purification. Oh, at this point, are there any questions? Maybe I should stop here and ask if there's any questions. All right, I'll move on. So advanced purification. For the advanced disciple, he or she who has dealt with much of his dark thoughts, their next step in purification involves working with the concept of duality or the pairs of opposites. This happens at the soul level. Keep in mind that the disciple emerges from the path of purification and onward to the path of transformation, that is, transformation of thought and emotion. This should probably be more like on the level of the second initiation, where you're really willfully and strongly dealing with problem energies and consciousness. In this context, his consciousness becomes a battleground where he stands between the two great forces of the observer, and he realizes his struggle is between his own selfish will, that is the personality, and that of the soul and the higher divine will. In the end, he will release his own separative will and choose the higher divine will over all things related to the form and the pools of the astral nature. So at this stage, you're really, the major things to overcome are your emotional reactivity. This is the most difficult challenge that most disciples or aspirants have to deal with. Examples of working with duality in consciousness. This could be like, for example, balancing the male-female interrelationships and energies that we feel or sense or experience. We could be learning and knowing what is best for the group. You may be connected to another spiritual group, or maybe it's just through your work. You could be working with a group of people who are not necessarily spiritually focused. Could be in a secular environment, but you're working from a space of service. So you could be learning and working with duality in your own consciousness. Working with duality in consciousness can also be about knowing one's own limited personal will versus the divine will, as I mentioned before. A reconciliation occurs mostly at the second initiation, where the energies of Buddhi purify the lower emotional and separative energies. At the third initiation, the dweller in the threshold and the angel of the presence come together and bring balance and complete at one-ment with the monad. The monad is our pure spirit. So there's considered to be 3 stages of the observer. Although becoming the observer and meditating go hand in hand, we will consider becoming the observer as a necessary first step prior to meditating. The main purpose of becoming the observer is to guide in the purification process. Once again, we're reminded that the activities in consciousness happen over long periods of time. Becoming the observer happens in stages and plays an important role in the path of liberation. So there are 3 distinct stages of becoming the observer. The first stage is the stage of the mental observer. In the initial stages of going within, you observe using a mental focus as you peer into the void of your mind. Now keep in mind that we're going to be doing a meditation at the end here, where we're going to be working as the observer in consciousness on different levels. So this background information will help understanding what we're going to be doing at the end of this talk. In this stage, your lower mind holds itself in the observing awareness. Here you are aware of the contents of your mind, your desires, your thoughts, and the forces of your etheric body. Second stage is known as the stage of pure awareness. And again, these stages take place over long periods of time. You don't immediately go from one stage to another. You typically, as an aspirant, you go to the disciple stage, or you go to the probationary stage, then discipleship stage, and then to the initiation stage, the path of initiation. And these will help you. And during these times, you're meditating and you're going through all these different stages in consciousness. But it's just giving you some type of a structure in consciousness of how this works, the background. In the stage of pure awareness, the soul is experienced as awareness. You steadily look within to see what you are, and you come to the awareness that you are the one who is observing with pure perception, pure consciousness, and pure seeing. The sense of I is strong, and the duality of the self and the other is fully present. In these first two stages, you realize you have been developing and expanding your consciousness, again, over long periods of time. So in these first two stages, which are basically the stage of the mental observer, you're basically, the mental observer is here at the lower concrete mind. I hope you can see the cursor on this image. Anyhow, you're working from the lower concrete mind. Your mind is quiet and still, and you're observing. So during this time, you have thought forms, feelings, sensations, and these things are all stilled in consciousness. And while this is happening, you're connecting with your higher self, the soul. Symbolically, this triangle here in the middle is the soul. And the soul is the lowest point of what is called the spiritual triad up here, which the higher part of the soul is part of the higher mind here. They're all one together. There's the higher abstract mind, that's part of it. And then there's the connecting with the plane of the intuition. So once you connect with the soul, you're open to letting these higher energies from the spiritual triad come and focus through your higher mind and filter into your lower concrete mind. In the stage of non-duality, in the advanced stage of pure awareness, the I awareness of the personality observer, or the one who has been observing, it then disappears altogether, and there's just one awareness. So in this particular chart here, or this image here, drawing, you have your mind, you, the personality, this is an advanced stage now, the stage of non-duality. So your mind has become, your threefold personality has become one with the soul. So you don't separate your mind or your threefold personality with the soul. You're just one being observing. And now you can deal with the concept of pure awareness and then be open to the energies in the higher planes, for example, the higher Buddhic plane and the energies of Buddhi. There we discover our nature is one of radiance, with coming from the Buddhic plane or the plane of intuition, where all creation is experienced as a manifestation and expression of the higher self. We see that the soul is not something located somewhere within or even outside of its own nature, but you come to see yourself and the higher self in everything. You are one. You realize that the divine by its nature is non-dual. So here in the lower mind, the lower concrete mind, even if we didn't have the soul present, a major factor or a capacity of the lower mind or the concrete mind is its ability to discriminate, to separate things. And so it says, I am this and that is that. I'm not one with that. I'm separate from it. So that's what the discriminative mind does. When you unite with the soul over a period of time, and you have this realization in consciousness, then you become one with the soul. And so you are just observing as that one being. And like I said, this is an advanced stage. We see that the soul is not something located somewhere outside of our nature, but you come to see the higher self in everything. You realize that the divine by its nature is non-dual, as I said. There's no separation of any kind. So at some point, you will have to relinquish the separate I nature and completely out one or merge with the higher consciousness. This understanding provides a pathway for purification to clear out all blocks or anything that blocks you from becoming one with that divine, with the divine. This is an unswerving focus upon initiation and upon awakening of the non-dual reality and the unfoldment of the naturally existing divinity within. Are there any questions at this point? Michael, Stacy, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you too.
Okay, great. Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm being
Yeah,
heard. It's great.
There's
Okay.
nothing in chat, and if anybody wants to ask a question by voice, just raise your hand.
Okay, great. So working as the observer, you will gain deeper understanding of your own nature and function of your mind through the study of becoming the observer. And why is this important? It's a subjective realm where all your thoughts and feelings are present, and also a place where you can come to an awareness of the higher self, the soul. Initially, you will observe errant energies present and need to purify them so that you can enable clear seeing. Through observing the mind, you as the spiritual seeker will learn to work consciously with force, or the expression of will, and energy by observing your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. By going within, you come to know the forces and energies present, whether inside or outside of you. Regardless, they are in your consciousness and you must deal with them. During the process of observation, you're learning about the limitations or hindrances and your strengths of the things that aid you, the thoughts or feelings that aid you. Keep in mind that the observer never goes away. Even after meditation, in your waking state, such as where you're at right now, you're in a waking state and you're observing that you're watching the screen and you're listening to me doing this. That's a form of observation, as you are keenly sensitive to all the energies present. Sensitivity here is about developing something called the esoteric sense, which I'll go into a little later. You'll come to know that stilling the mind and the emotions is not enough, as you will want to know about the process of transforming your lower thought forms and practice mental techniques. As much as you align with your soul, you will observe how your inner nature is changing. You are focusing and learning on how to hold your consciousness while observing and listening on the mental plane where the soul resides. So again, here you have this graphic here. The soul is symbolically represented as a triangle. And here we are down here as the personality. We unite these three together, the mental, emotional, and physical, and we see ourselves threefold personality as one. And then we merge with the soul, and then we become one or at one with the soul. You are learning to allow the lesser self to withdraw in the background and let the soul's energies flow unimpeded. You learn to practice dispassion and harmlessness, especially when reactive feelings and energies are present. You eventually transform the mind in stages through the paths of probation and discipleship. Another concept to keep in mind as the observer. Now, just you think about now, we're just talking about just being the observer. This is what the whole concept here is now. So you may want to ask yourself in consciousness, how much harmlessness do I practice? While still on the subject of becoming the observer, we'll explore some other themes here. And one of the themes is there are many soul qualities to cultivate and embrace. Among them is harmlessness. Harmlessness is a mindset and practice that is important to bring forth for all encounters with people and situations in your environment. Why? When connecting with a soul, you will quickly find that it is its nature. Its nature is of love and goodwill. The practice of harmlessness is a bridge to the higher planes and spiritual growth. There is a saying, you cannot approach the master until you have lost the power to do harm. This is in thought and action and requires a realignment of the personality. It is recommended to study yourself and see how harmfulness and harmlessness have on others. This can be done during meditation or an evening review by analyzing your emotions so that you have your emotions and your effect on others, so that there's no mood, depression, nor emotional reaction that can harm your fellow man. Ask, am I reacting or responding? Violent aspiration, misplaced or misdirected energy may harm others. So look not only at your misguided tendencies, but how you express your values. We can also analyze our actions. If you are harmless in your actions, remember how this looks and feels. Practice and be the example. Then finally, have an analysis of your thoughts. Attempt to be harmless and eliminate harmful states of thinking. Harmlessness brings caution in judgment, reticence of speech, the ability to refrain from impulsive action, and a demonstration of a non-critical spirit. Harmlessness is an attitude of one who lives consciously as a soul, whose natural inclination is love, and whose method is inclusiveness, not separation. I'll be speaking in greater depth about spiritual study in January's talk. So, transformation of thought. There's an old esoteric axiom, energy follows thought. This means that whatever you focus on, or in whatever direction your mind goes, so will the direction of your thinking. If you're thinking, I want to get so-and-so for my own self, then these thoughts in combination with will and desire will drive you to carry out the task, regardless of whether you create karma for yourself. In short, you bring life and vitality to your thoughts. When aligning your mind with the soul, eventually the lower mind will become more soul infused. Again, this takes place over time. Here, the light of the soul as an energy is transforming your thoughts so that you become a conscious creator in thought form building. Ask yourself often, what is my motivation when creating thoughts in all my actions? The esotericist, or one who is aware of forces and energies in the environment, knows and understands the appropriate use of the mind is for creating thought forms, for carrying out the soul's purpose, and not for the selfish needs of a separated personality. It is this soul-driven mindset that allows you to know that you should never force yourself on others while engaging in any activity. Continuing on the theme of transforming your thought and emotional energy, we're going to talk about redemption and the reorientation of the personality vehicles. When connecting with the soul, either through meditation or being the observer, you are in fact redeeming or reorienting, that is, upgrading your lower vehicles. Probably most of the time, this happens in the background of your conscious mind. Redemption in the esoteric context is the act of transformation of the etheric matter of the lower 18 planes of your threefold nature and replacing it with the higher, finer energies of the spiritual triad, namely Buddhi. So here we are down here on the lower planes, lower concrete mind, lower astral emotional, and the physical form, the actual body itself. Your etheric body, which has vitality and life, your emotions and your thoughts. These are all different forms of energy. And this energy is redeemed or upgraded when you meditate and you connect with your higher self. And how is it redeemed? And what is it redeemed with? It is redeemed with Buddhi from the Buddhic plane. So that will happen because you're connected with the soul, right here is the triangle, and the higher mind. And this is more, it's more in the intermediate stages that you really start doing this consciously. But initially, unconsciously, when you're meditating and you sincerely want to connect with your higher self, sincerity is key. And you honestly look at yourself and want to transform yourself. I'll talk about this a little bit more later when we get into meditation more. But you're basically purifying and redeeming and upgrading your lower vehicles. Remember what I talked about last time in October. One of the major purposes of the path is for the pure spirit, the monad, to have a fully conscious and physical experience on all the lower planes. The lower planes, the entire cosmic physical plane is made up of 49 planes. And you see partially here, this shows the different strata or different planes here. Each subplane is made up of each plane is made up of 7 subplanes. And so the physical plane has 7 subplanes, the astral plane and the mental plane each have 7 planes each. So, I mean, to get to too much detail of that, but there's a total of 49 planes as we move up towards the monad. So in practical terms, the energies of redemption and reorientation will, over time, transform any tendencies of harmlessness, selfishness, or irrational behavior. This will result in all lower emotional and mental plane reactivity become neutralized and raised up. In this example, the astral substance is redeemed or upgraded and is replaced with pure reason from the Buddhic plane. While in meditation, the soul's light will do the job of redemption and transformation of the lower mind. Are there any questions?
I am not seeing any hands raised or questions or comments in the chat box.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's continue then. Right thought form building. In today's world, people build thought forms for both light and dark purposes. Our purpose here is not for you to become conscious of all things of your own consciousness. Our purpose here is for you to become conscious of all things in your own consciousness and to create thought forms from a place of the soul and not the personality. So your task is to become fully conscious in your mind and how you create thought forms. Your task as a spiritual seeker is to impose a new and higher rhythm to your thoughts and to awaken the power to think clearly and accurately. As the observer, you will offset errant thought forms by observing the energy, knowing its limitations, and creating its polar opposite. If, for example, there's an anxiety or impatience in the emotional nature, then it can be overcome with calmness and patience. Or you will replace control and attachment with dispassion and detachment. In Alice Bailey's book, Glamour World Problem, the chapter near the end of the book, actually, is called The Ending of Glamour. It has numerous techniques for doing this, and my handout, Techniques for Working in Consciousness, will also, which we'll go to shortly in a little bit. We'll talk about the different techniques there. I've abbreviated many of the techniques that are in Glamour and World Problem. You are learning to hold a transformational thought form, and it allows you to attain a higher spiritual objective and thus transform the condition or situation in your life through conscious effort. While in meditation or as the observer, you are learning to repattern your limiting thought forms. This means that you are focusing and holding your awareness on the mental level of the soul and not being driven by your emotional reactive nature. We'll experiment a little with this in the observer meditation today. Comprehension. We've examined some hindrances and obstacles. As you're moving on the path, you might want to have a deeper understanding about how integration with the soul works. Observation here doesn't necessarily have to be in or during meditation. It can also be a quiet reflection during spiritual study or attentiveness in the waking mind. It's important to ask, what are you spiritually learning and comprehending? It should be a teaching of a more advanced study about controlling all that you think and being able to repattern those thought forms that don't work for you. If you have an issue, look at yourself honestly and decide the best course of action. You can be using mantras and affirmations. These can help you to focus thoughts for repatterning, for overcoming emotional hindrances. You may want to search out specific affirmations for focusing on purifying your emotions and reactivity. I've only included some suggested affirmations. Those were in the terminology handout that I gave last time. It's on the second page. Other forms of comprehension or around the subject of comprehension. Spiritual study develops knowledge and the intuition. And like I said, in January, I'll go deeper into what spiritual study is about. And from spiritual study, you gain experience and understanding or communication with the soul. That intuition is developing. You're sensing what and why you do something and determining the source of the material in question. You'll have identification with thoughts and phenomena in your inner world as part of yourself and not with somebody else's. Be aware of this process and take responsibility. Discrimination and discernment. Learn to make wise, conscious choices in thought and action. For example, learning about right and wrong. Do I see the situation in stark terms of gray, or is there another way of looking at it? Is it just black and white for me? So from this process of comprehension and deeper spiritual study, you learn to create a new intentionality with your thoughts and mind by making all of your life an activity of soul purpose. You learn to trust the intuition, which is developing. The esoteric sense. I mentioned this from before, a little earlier. The term esoteric sense denotes a gradually developing spiritual power in the disciple who has developed a measure of alignment and integration with the soul. It's probably something that'll take place during intermediate phases. So you'll have to meditate and align yourself with the higher self, the soul, over some period of time to be able to really develop this. But the esoteric sense allows you to live and function subjectively on mental levels and the lower 18 subplanes. The disciple holds an attitude which can orient in both inner and outer planes. Possess a constant inner contact with the soul. And this marks a transcendence of personality issues and allows for him, the disciple, aspirant, to have a complete control over his emotional life. The esoteric sense actively demonstrates love and wisdom in all that he does through goodwill, cooperation, and loving understanding. It allows him to mentally tune into the realms of thoughts and ideas. You can choose to have those mental concepts and ideals which will be recognized in the world of everyday thinking and living. You can learn to cultivate the esoteric sense and know that meditation is required. As time passes, this results in developing an attitude of a mind with detached thoughts and emotions. So again, the esoteric sense can be cultivated by holding the attitude of the observer during meditation, spiritual study, and your waking state. Now, in a little bit more practical terms, the esoteric sense can be used when, for example, you're looking at a news broadcast, and hopefully you're dispassionately observing the news broadcast and not reacting, ideally. So with the esoteric sense, your sensing says, well, what is the news broadcaster saying? Or what is the person being interviewed saying? What are the higher spiritual implications and how it affects people? This is when you're using the esoteric sense. It's really using the intuition. It's developing a faculty of the intuition. Now let's talk about meditation. When I was originally putting together this presentation, I was going back and forth about, should I talk about the stages of the observer first or talk about meditation? And I decided to go with the talking about the observer first, because meditation, because being the observer, like I said, it's part of the purification process. So after you cleared away a lot of hindrances and problems that are causing you to not being able to focus really well, and you have to discipline your mind over this situation, you'll finally get to a point of where you can really meditate. And I'll talk about what meditation is here shortly. A note on meditation as I'm teaching it. The Moria Federation is using different types of meditation. What I'm teaching here will in no way conflict, but indeed can enhance or supplement deeper connections with your soul. In essence, this type of meditation that I'm presenting here is about communing with the soul or the higher self for achieving an experience of pure awareness and beingness without thought. Meditation is the first of 3 pillars of a spiritual practice. And I'll be addressing the other 2 pillars, spiritual study and service, in January and the February talks. If you are consciously on a spiritual path, then you should be learning to meditate. Meditation is the best way to integrate your mental, emotional, and physical etheric form, that is, the threefold personality, into a sensed oneness with the soul. Meditation describes a process of how the mind is in its true and natural state. In this teaching about meditation, you are not trying to create a peaceful state per se, but rather have a direct experience of who you truly are in your natural state. I'll say that again. Meditation is not about trying to create a peaceful state per se, but rather have a direct experience of who you truly are in your natural state. So what is your natural state? The soul's consciousness is your natural state. And then remember what I said in the talk last month. I said that the soul is one stage to a stage of awareness to comprehend and to experience. And once you get to a more advanced stage in consciousness, you realize that the soul is only one step on a expanded consciousness toward understanding that there's greater parts of yourself to be aware of, namely the monad, for example. That is your pretty much your natural state on the much higher state. So in this natural state, you learn to put aside all limiting thoughts and feelings such as anger, separatism, and the me-only mindset, so that you can stand in a state of pure beingness and pure awareness of the soul. This will not happen immediately, but gradually over long periods of time. Meditation is about stilling the body, the thoughts, and the emotions through the mind. Using mental techniques, the mind becomes calm. Then what? You learn about who you are and about the forces that make you up. You will have to learn about how to transform the mind using certain techniques, which I'm providing here in this talk, so that your mind can become a useful tool for expressing the soul's purpose, which is ultimately service. In the January class, I'll be talking more in depth about service. By establishing a stabilized consciousness, you will see yourself as becoming more conscious and awake in all that you do in both your inner and outer life. I'm going to be passing out maybe Michael Crow or Stacy. You can make available the in the chat the handout called 9 Stages of Meditation. This handout, I'm not going to talk about it in this talk, but it's meant to be supplemental information that you read outside of the talk. It describes a basic understanding of the stages of meditation and what you will encounter until the spiritual liberation is fully achieved. And keep in mind that the stages of meditation are really describing stages of purification, removing hindrances, stages of probation, discipleship, and initiation. Those are all wrapped together with the stages of meditation. So prerequisites for meditation. Before I go on, are there any questions or comments?
I am looking for hands and comments, but at this point, not seeing any.
Wonderful. Okay. So prerequisites for meditation. Real progress in meditation requires establishing the right conditions in your meditation environment, that is, your mind, or it can be your physical environment too, where you're meditating. I'm going to present some practical methods for providing good foundation for a meditation practice. The first one is a calm space, surroundings that are noise-free and peaceful. So obviously turn off your phone. You want to stop the flow of intellectual thought. This has to do with fantasy daydreaming and intellectualizing the teachings. You, the meditator, may be using your imagination for fantasy purposes, and this distracts you from focusing and making soul contact. And you also want to have a life of pure ethics. For example, right living and harmlessness. Needless to say, harmful activities in the heart or mind will greatly disturb the mind, such as lying, stealing, or engaging in harmful activities. These actions create karma and negatively impact the mind. For posture, it's best to place the body in an upright position. Let's focus on this lower right image here where the person is seated. Seated in an upright position where the body is relaxed but cannot fall asleep. The vertical uprightness of the body allows for the subtle energies between and around the chakras to flow properly. So we have the chakras here. We have them also here on this image. And we have energies that are flowing, etheric energies that are flowing through the chakras. The chakras, one of the functions of the chakras, I'll go more into this in next month's talk on the human constitution, but one of the functions of the chakras purpose is for regulation of the glands. They provide vitality and prana flowing through the etheric body. And they also allow for soul stimulation. Identifying goals in meditation. We have identified that the main purpose of meditation is to establish a direct contact with the soul. Now, it's important to identify realistic goals for yourself and conduct an honest assessment of yourself by asking the following questions. Why am I meditating? What are my motives, my attitude, my goals, and my purpose as I enter into meditation? Answering any of these or all of them helps you to establish a mental approach, mental versus an emotional approach. Another question to ask is, what keeps me from realizing oneness with my soul? If I have a limitation such as fear or anger or reactivity, etc., then what am I doing about transforming the energy? So an initial goal in meditation, now this again can be mixed in with the state of the observer too. So you could easily focus this concept of approaching, I'm going into meditation, but first I have to do purification. I have to look at myself and ask these questions. Or you can go straight into meditation. So initial goal in meditation is to create an alignment in all parts of your personality, that is the mental, emotional, and the physical, and see yourself as one with the soul. And as I said before, this is done in stages. You identify with the concept of the soul's energy as a tension in consciousness. So when you make soul contact, that is, your mind is calm and clear, the thought forms and the emotions are calm, or as the Tibetan docx says, your solar plexus becomes like a still pool. So your consciousness is basically calm and clear. So when you sense the soul, you'll feel a tension. And this tension is something you want to expand in your consciousness. Another goal in meditation could be to directly experience a state of beingness of the higher self and sensing pure awareness without thought. Now, this is more of an advanced stage, intermediate to advanced stage. This will entail developing an inner capacity for inner seeing and listening. Listening, when I use the term listening, we're not just listening with our ears, that's in the physical plane environment. Listening is in the form of observing. Listening and observing are one and the same, because you're seeing what's around you. You're perceiving it with your intuition. As you progress on the path, you will learn that observation and listening are very similar. That is, you meditate in silence and you listen for impressions from your higher self. And if you remember from last month, an impression is just that. It's like, I just got an impression. So it's like it doesn't have an intellectual words for it in the beginning. You immediately sense somebody walks into the room and you have immediate impression of them. And then what happens is you simply says, oh, well, he or she is wearing this clothes, or their hair is in a certain way, or they're walking in a certain way, or they speak in a certain way, or something like this. This is just about a person. So your impression is simply a subjective realization about someone or something. So this is something you tune into in your nature. The object of concentration when you're in meditation. When speaking of an object of concentration in meditation, you want to focus your attention toward an object to aid in focusing the mind or to help to prepare for meditation. And this can be done in several ways. You can use a sacred image, such as a candle or a picture, or an image of an evolved being, like a picture of Yogananda, or maybe Sri Ramakrishna. Or perhaps some people may want to look at the picture of docx, the Tibetan, or the Christ even, or the image that we have of the Christ. Another thing to do as a form of concentration is focus on the breath, pranayamic or rhythmic breathing. This can create a calming sensation in the mind and the etheric and physical form. You can do soundings to deepen your meditation. You can use a seed thought in meditation, like an affirmation or a mantra or a chant. There's millions of mantras or affirmations available on the internet. If you just Google affirmations. I and my soul are one. I am love, truth, and beauty. These are two different affirmations here. I also included, excuse me, I also included some affirmations or mantras on the back of the terminology page last month. Those should be available to you also. They're on the Makara website. This exercise using affirmations or sounding even, can be useful to eliminate hang-ups, angers, and fears. You'll have to experiment what's right for you. So we want to understand, talking about concentration, we want to understand that concentration is not meditation. You use concentration to discipline the mind and hold your initial focus to develop comprehension. Meditation begins after the tension of concentration is released. I'll say that again. Meditation begins after the tension of concentration is released. At that moment, there's no thought or feeling, but a space and awareness between them. That space is a state of beingness and a significant goal to achieve. After reaching a meditative state, you can retrieve impulses coming from the soul, impulses or impressions. Yeah, these are called impressions. They can be ideas, insights, or wisdom, or guidance. In the advanced stages of meditation, this awareness becomes more regular and inevitably becomes a continuity of consciousness. In the handout on terminology, I provided the word, let's see, where did I put my my own techniques? Well, on your own continuity of consciousness is where you're basically developing. Let's see, what did I write here? Major goal for the meditator is to establish a continuity of consciousness for perceiving the higher levels of the mind and allow a continual flow of impressions from the spiritual triad. So continuity refers to the disciple being able to successfully hold the tension of the soul connection over a period of time. This connection will lead to a more advanced stages of discipleship in the initiation and creating a continuity of consciousness. So basically, it is continuity means that you're in meditation, you're experiencing the soul awareness, but now you're out of meditation and you're going about your day doing whatever you're doing, but you still have an awareness of the soul tension or the soul presence. So that's a continuity that's continuing there. That's something that takes time to develop over time. Stages of meditation. In reviewing becoming the observer and meditation processes, we understand that a major purpose of meditation is to achieve an alignment and integration of your threefold nature with that of the soul. This should be your initial goal. Much later, you'll learn that it is your pure spirit, the monad, which is your true guiding energy. That's in a much more advanced stages of meditation. Meditation is a process that prepares the mind for clear seeing on different levels of the mental plane and later the spiritual triad. Keep in mind that the soul is on the mental plane, the higher mental plane. We have our mind, our lower mind. That's part of the lower mind. That's not part of the higher mind. So we want to get to that higher mind, commune with the soul. Achieving deep spiritual connections with the higher self will require time and effort. In this journey, there are stages you'll go through to achieve the higher connections. Each stage is characterized by removing obstacles that block clear seeing, and there are changes and expansions of consciousness along the way. After a measure of purification, you can begin to experience pure awareness and a direct experience of the higher self in its natural state, free of distractions of the lower energies. You begin to see that you have a choice in all that you do and that you don't have to be controlled by disrupted or be disrupted from every thought or feeling. Thus, you can learn to hold your consciousness peacefully. Meditation process is also a means to slow down and observe how the mind works. In the handout stages of meditation, the various stages, as I said, are just generally described of what the probationer disciple to initiate will experience over time. I provided this as supplemental reading. Are there any questions at this point or comments?
Yes,
Yes.
David.
Yeah, go ahead.
Diana Warren has her hand raised, and I ask her to unmute herself.
Okay, go ahead, Diana.
Could you give us a reference to read more about the esoteric sense?
Oh boy.
Or you can send it to me email if you want.
Yeah, I can do that. I think I have your email, Diana. Yeah, and I'll actually, what I'll do is I'll put it in a short little Word file, and I'll post that. I'll give that to Michael Stacy and Michael Crow so it can be posted onto Makara. About
And
that's
I
a
have
sense.
another question. What I think I'm understanding from the lecture is that you can use concentration as a preliminary to meditation.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's very helpful.
But but in meditation, well, let's just say when you go through, like I say, with the stage, you're going through the stage of the observer. You're purifying your mind. You're purifying your lower thoughts and distractions, whatever, and then you're getting yourself into a relatively calm space. You're not going to get into a really calm space until much more advanced stages, which takes years to develop. But a major concept of concentration is about discipline. And so you're disciplining the mind to say, no, I don't have time for this energy right now. So I'm consciously choosing to say that my mind is calm and not distracted by this thought form or this distracting energy. So it's a stage you go through. You have to willfully learn to discipline your mind and be able to do that. And another major concept, which I may not be communicating really well, is the concept of sincerely and honestly looking at yourself and say, yes, I've got some screwed up parts of myself that really need to be addressed and dealt with. And I realize that my limitations, my hindrances, my obstacles, they need to be addressed. I personally am doing this for myself. And so I'm purifying myself by looking at myself. And you realize also that some of your purification may also be from unconscious sources. It may be just some trauma you had in childhood or even a past life. I'm not going to talk about past lives, but I mean, it's just simply, there's many different ways that you could have a difficult energy in your consciousness.
And one more thing, this goes a little bit back into the lecture. There were 3 stages of the observer: the
Right.
mental observer, pure awareness, and didn't get the third.
A stage of non-duality, I believe.
Okay.
I called it, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can put that one also in a separate Word file too.
That's it. Thank you.
Sure enough.
Are those in any of the documents that you already have uploaded?
Okay, I'll create those 2 documents, the Esoteric Sense and the other one on let's see, the stages of the observer. Yeah. Okay, I'll get those to you after this talk. All righty. Okay, so I'm going to be talking specifically about the handout techniques for working in consciousness. So Michael, can you make sure those are available to people? I'm actually, it's in the chat. I'm actually going to be abbreviating these different, what do you call it, different techniques here in this slide.
I just posted the stages, the techniques, and your terminology affirmations document in the chat.
All right, great, thank you. So to conclude our discussion on confronting hindering or disruptive thoughts, you, the spiritual seeker, need to have tools so that you can successfully work and do your work for removing obstacles and veils that block clear seeing of the soul's pure awareness. So let's talk about the as-if technique. Some of these are very simple and basic. I mean, you can go through the words and describe them, and it seems more complicated than it really is. But once you understand these, it's really easy to do something. Just as an actor, it's much like pretending or acting out of specific energy, such as you want to practice more, you see yourself as being more limited or withdrawn or overly modest or something. And you need to be more outgoing and more talkative or more engaging in conversation when you're working in group works, for example. Maybe you want to be more cooperative and accepting and practicing goodwill. It is the concept of invoking the polar opposite energy or force for a positive outcome. This requires invoking the personal will. Also practicing dispassion that can help you to clearly think by negating negative emotions. So if something limits you in consciousness, identify what that is, and then see the polar opposite, and then start the polar opposite, meaning that you're invoking a higher energy or a higher value or a higher concept. That's a major thing to consider there. The technique of light. Okay, this is quite possibly the most important technique that I'll be presenting. And most of these techniques that I'm providing here are found in Glamour World Problem in the back of the book. Pages, if you happen to have the book, pages 190 through 197 particularly. That's the technique of light. The technique of light, very simply, is the idea for overcoming illusion. It's a mental technique. Mental, think about this as mental. It's not an emotional technique, a mental technique. We already have too much emotional activity in our consciousness. Concept is to respond to things and to say, my mind is greater than these emotional reactive energies that I have. So the mental is for purification, mental technique for purification. When you, the spiritual seeker, are confronting a limitation in your mind or astral body, this technique can also be applied to negating glamour and illusion. So very simply, the technique of light is simply saying, you're putting together your threefold personality, your mental, emotional, and physical, and say that I have this problem, I have X problem, and I have a glamour, which is illusion in the astral body. I have a quick temper. My emotions are too, I'm angry too quick. So, and obviously this is contrary to what the soul's energy is. So you're saying, honestly, looking at yourself saying, okay, well, I want to negate this energy or neutralize it. So I'm going to merge the soul energy with my personality. So in your consciousness, in meditation, and or as the observer, you're taking the energy of reactivity or the fiery personality, the anger energy, and you're merging it with the souls. So that's all it is. But you're going to see how difficult that can be, because it takes time to neutralize that energy, because you have to be willing to let go of that glamour, that illusion, that difficulty. And that's the essence of the technique of light. So the technique is essentially, it describes how the light of the personality, the lower mind, and the light of the soul merge together to transform the energy of the illusion. It can also be used for repatterning thought forms. So again, what you're doing is becoming the observer and see the emotion or the illusion dispassionately. So you're taking the emotion off of it. You can see, simply say, I am angry in these situations, and I see myself in this situation, and I see myself with maybe my spouse or with my children, or maybe with somebody at my work, or maybe some other location or whatever. You see yourself doing it, and that's being dispassionate because you're not feeling it. You visualize the soul's light combined with your personality for creating one powerful floodlight shining on the illusion. And you're merging those two together. So you and your personality and your soul become one with that light. Sincerity is key. Overcoming fear. As I spoke again, let's see, fear happens to all of us, can even be felt by higher level initiates. It'll only be overcome by bringing forth the soul's light of truth and awareness. In these teachings, in this teaching, it is recommended to deal with the problem energy from one level above. And when I say one level above, where do you feel fear? It's an emotion. It's felt in the emotional body. So therefore, you want to deal with this from the mental plane. In this case, mentally force out the fear by dynamic power of substitution. This is similar to the technique of light. So how does this work? You become the observer and separate yourself from the fearful feeling or situation and willfully relax your physical and astral bodies. Perhaps you can control your breathing. This invokes stillness in the mind through concentration and permeate the entire personality with pure white light. This is a process of invoking the higher will for calming the lower mental, emotional, physical vehicles. And this is a mental exercise. So obviously, when we feel fear, we're not always in control of the situation because you're in fear, right? You're saying that I don't feel secure in this environment. So this is when you're basically in a situation where you can basically exert some control over this. Another technique you can employ is something called complete identification with the pure awareness of the soul. The more a person connects with the soul or higher awareness through meditation or in outward service activity, the more it will help to displace and replace the lower energies blocking clear seeing and knowing. So it's really, it's not so much a technique as an action in consciousness, if you can think of it that way. It's more of a, it's more you're moving your consciousness toward becoming one with the soul. You're merging with it, you're integrating with it. You're going to be integrating with it first and then merging with it later. Another technique you can practice is something called focusing on higher values. Higher values such as love, compassion, cooperation, goodwill, harmlessness, sense of justice, and practice goodness will go a long way toward offsetting the lower energies of selfishness, fear, and anger. Another technique can be analyze and identify negative energies, whether it's yours or theirs, somebody else's. Because when you experience somebody else's anger, remember that anger is coming into your consciousness, or you're feeling it through your astral body. And it's like, what are you doing with that energy? Are you allowing that energy to condition you, or are you in control of your own aura and consciousness? This is a very important distinction here. Again, you can invoke the polar opposite to overcome the energy. This is a form of substitution. Through all of these, let's see, okay, like I say, these particular, many of these techniques, I think I gave you, how many techniques? 7? Oh, 9. Use of affirmations, mantras, and chanting. There's overcoming fear and anger. We did that with that. How much harmlessness in thought, harmlessness in emotions, technique of a detachment, observer of the mind, mental grounding or centering exercise. These are all part of this techniques that is a 3-page handout I have here. And most of these will be found in some form in either Treatise in White Magic or in Glamour World Problem. In Glamour World Problem book by Alice Bailey, that one is more toward the back. I forgot the exact chapter it's called, but it's approximately page 190, approximately there. And so you want to become aware that as much as you are consciously using these techniques, you are consciously expressing the higher energies of the soul and becoming one with the soul and integrating with the soul and merging with the soul. All these different concepts. We're going to go into the meditation soon. I'm basically done with the lecture portion of this. Are there any questions or comments anybody wants to make? Any clarifications?
I am looking for hands and I don't see any presently. There are no other comments in the chat box yet.
All right. Okay. I'm going to be presenting a meditation. Well, I'm using the word meditation loosely here. It's basically, we're going to go into consciousness is what we're going to do. We're going to be first the observer, and then we're going to do things on general observing. Then we're going to have another one. It's called right thought form building. And then we're also going to be doing another one called stage experiencing the greater observer. So basically 3 different experiences here. And so I've given you a lot of the intellectual material which is behind what I'm going to be, what you're going to be experiencing, hopefully. Now, the nature of some of what I'm doing here is the fact that you do this in your own quiet space, and you're not having me in the background lecturing you and talking and going through the words and everything. This is something for you to absorb and understand. But of course, initially in this whole thing, I'm guiding you, so I will be using words here. So, but much of what I'll be talking with here is for you to go into and experience in your own time. Okay, let's go into the first phase here, the stage. Let's close our eyes and go into the interior of your mind. Take a deep breath. And what do you observe? What does it feel like? Thoughts and sensations. Without any attachment, just observe your feelings, your thought forms, and physical sensations. If you have an anger or fear or love or caring in your consciousness, what does it feel like? How dominant are these energies in my life? And as the observer, you may want to ask, are my base drives and motivations based on love or harmlessness, or are they based on selfishness? Practice dispassion and remove any sense of feeling or energy or any charge on the thought. Just simply observe it and see it as energy and force. Using the as if technique, change your attitude by emulating the new energy. That is, you become cooperation instead of resistance or contention. You practice patience instead of impatience, or harmlessness instead of harmfulness. Feel and know what that's like. Let us now refocus our minds and let us work with what's called the technique of light. So you want to become aware your mental, emotional, and physical are together as one, and you see your consciousness as the personality. Now sense that greater part of yourself. That is the soul, the presence of the soul. As the observer, take a troublesome thought or feeling you might want to change or repattern the thought form. Identify a troublesome thought, such as maybe a fear or an anger or something. Now visualize the mind of the soul. Visualize in your mind the soul's light or presence combined with that of your personality, creating one powerful floodlight shining on the thought form to transform it. You merge the soul's light with the personality together, and they become one floodlight shining on the troublesome thought form. Keep in mind the personality and the soul are working together in full cooperation with this process. So with the technique of light, you may have to do this a number of times to neutralize or destroy a persistent and deep-rooted illusion. Sincerity is key. But the result will be with the application of this technique, you're imposing the higher soul wisdom and values to your personality. The values such as cooperation, love, understanding, sense of social justice, etc. These are all soul values. The last stage that we'll be working with here today is called experiencing the greater observer. And you want to detach yourself from all feeling and thought and experience pure awareness and just beingness, and ask, you may want to even ask, who am I? But then that's a thought form in its own right. So just experience the pure awareness and beingness. And you experience the greater presence that's aware of you, greater part of yourself. And you become the greater observer also, awareness that you and the higher self are one. And you may want to allow yourself to be drawn into it, merge with it. While you're doing this, notice any changes in your thoughts or your body, your emotional self, sensations. Do you have any impressions that come to you? Let us now bring ourselves back to waking awareness. And these type of mental meditations and being the observer, since they're mental in focus, they cause the personality towards moving toward a vertical alignment. That is, they cause us, if I could go back to this image here. If you were like in a sitting position, for example, like in this image here, you're seeing that the person is vertical. That is, their spine is erect and their back and their neck and their head are aligned upwards. So this is a standard form for meditation, not laying down. Laying down is it's almost like a thought form saying, I got to lay down because I'm tired. So the physical form becomes tired and it goes to sleep, or it says, I need to go to sleep. That's not the point of meditation, obviously. So we want to, in meditation, we want to have full awareness, full consciousness. There's an awakenedness in consciousness that takes place. And as much as you do this and remove obstacles, hindrances, obstacles, you clear away and open the pathways toward greater expanded levels of awareness. So your goal in your entire spiritual process in meditation, at least one of the major goals, is to expand your awareness, expand your horizons. I am much greater than my personality can perceive. You'll do this through spiritual study. You'll discipline your errant thoughts, your emotions, anything that's holding you back from expanding your awareness. You'll learn to do this because you sincerely want to expand your consciousness. You sincerely want to merge with your higher self. So this is all part of the process which we're talking about here. Does anybody have any comments or insights they want to share?
I'm looking for hands raised. I'm looking for comments in the chat box. And nothing yet.
Okay, also with the other handout that I'm giving you called the 9 Stages of Meditation, this is actually part of another completely standalone talk separately from this one, which refers to a Tibetan tanka. A Tibetan tanka is like a religious painting painted on a particular piece of silk or cloth of some type. And it's basically Buddhist in perception or appearance, but it doesn't have to be, because this describes processes, basically even certain clearing techniques you may do, to take it in a non-religious way, clearing techniques, a sense of discipline in consciousness. You're disciplining errant thought forms and things, and you're learning to focus the mind. And that's going to be done with discipline in the early and intermediate stages. And then this stages of meditation refers to literally the different stages that you will go for or go through until you reach a final liberation in consciousness. Now, liberation in consciousness is achieving the higher initiations, of course, and that means much greater expanded awareness than most of us, if not all of us, can comprehend at this point, and that's fine. So we just simply know that this is an end goal. It doesn't have to necessarily be in this lifetime. And that there's different phases you go through. So you'll see some vocabulary in here like corrective or patch placement, like in stage 3, where the mind recognizes distractions and can return to the state of concentration. Well, a patch it's literally just simply a removal of the obstacle that's there to with an affirmation or a mantra, etc. So this is simply, it's just a term there, it's being used. So you can, this is a general description of the stages of meditation. And what you'll do is you'll also overlap stages of discipleship, you'll overlap stages of, overlap the stages of discipleship and probation, stages of being the observer, and meditation. These are all together in one. This is like there's no separation. And this is all part of your spiritual study, is to see the interconnectedness of the entire path of liberation here through the stages of meditation. Let's see. So this in my mind is one of the more important, this lecture today, or the concepts of meditation and purification, are perhaps the most important spiritual steps that we can possibly take on our path. And so what we're doing is the last topic last month was basically an overview of the entire course. And so this is more into the detail of the process of liberation and consciousness. Next month, we're going to be talking about human constitution and the purpose of the human mind and its components, etc. I think I had that's in the description. I think that's on the Makara website too, for all the different, the remaining four courses in this course, remaining lessons. And my purpose is to basically showing you many different aspects of who we are as human beings and the different parts of ourselves, and how to unify these together and see them as one. Because we live in largely, this is a secular world, particularly in the West. And if you go into the Eastern cultures like Burma, Bhutan, Nepal, whatever, they're going to have much more of a spiritual understanding, perhaps even in India too, or parts of India. They're going to have more of a spiritual connection with the self in relation to the outer environment. We don't really know this really well as a culture, as a country, as a nation. So this is for us individually to pull our own consciousness individually together in how I relate to myself. I and myself are one, but I have to fully realize that. And then I realize that the world that I interact with, the world full of illusion and glamour and all sorts of distortions and distractions, etc., is the world that I interact with too. But what do I do with these energies? What do I do with these errant thought forms and emotions? What do I do with reactivity? What do I do with anger and fear and harmfulness and things like this? And so we see these all the time in our environment, or frequently in our environment. So it's a major concept to grasp, which I'll be getting into probably in January talk, is the concept of service, because we want to see ourselves as whole in our spiritual work. We do this through spiritual study, through many different topics that are taught through Moria Federation, and the spiritual studies through the Arcane School, or through the just reading the books by Sarah Darian, by Rorik, by Bailey, Blavatsky, whatever. These are all spiritual study, and they're all referring to a similar concept of going toward liberation. And so I ask you to keep all this in mind when I'm giving these different more detailed sections of the journey of the soul.
David.
Yes.
We have some shares in the comments in the chat box.
Please go for it.
And Roz shared, when we did the observer meditation, the usual things that happen when I meditate changed. It was different and far deeper. Thank you.
Excellent. Good. Now remember, all these different techniques that you have on the handout, you take these into your own private time and space, and they are supplemental to whatever spiritual practice you may already have. So you embellish these things and expand your awareness. Is there anything, Michael? Anything else?
And then Jane has shared, this class course seems to be a really needed clarification for me. I have done some things, but not been effective. Thank you for this course to guide me in truing up where I am.
Excellent. Good.
And Jim asks, could you please clarify what Alice Bailey means by not sitting for development in meditation? Does this mean not trying to develop lower psychism, but focusing on expanding consciousness is okay?
I'm not sure the exact quote that you just cited there, but not sitting for development suggests, yes, not for lower psychism. I would agree with that, because it takes place over time, where it could be months and years, lifetimes even, where the powers, the cities that are also called, that the latent abilities come forth in a person. It could be inadvertently. For example, I have in my own practice, I'm aware of the presence of different entities around me, or I might call them guides, like spirit guides. I don't know what they are. They don't have any particular thought form words with me, but I'm aware of them through, not only do I sense their presence, but I also hear pitches and tones. So I know their presence. And these pitches and tones for me personally they can happen at the most innocuous times. I could be driving a car, I could be watching something on TV, or I could be meditating. It could be happening at all sorts of different times. It's like somebody or some entity has just come into my aura and says, oh, by the way, I'm here. So to me, that's like almost being aware subjectively of different energetic presences, which means a key for me also to say, oh, pay attention to your higher self. How much of your higher self is present right now in consciousness? So these are little things for me. As far as also development, the teachings, particularly by Alice Bailey, Dwell Cool, they talk about how we're not supposed to focus per se on our own personal development. And I will personally clarify that with my own interpretation, saying we can do our own personal development in our own personal space in consciousness meditation, but not necessarily share that with other people, because the Tibetan has told us that our major purpose in our path of liberation is to become of service. So that I'm developing myself, my personality, I'm at one-ing with the soul, etc. I'm doing all this for the purpose of ultimately becoming a vehicle or a conduit for service. And I'll talk more deeper about this in the January talk, but that's a concept that is that to me, I think needs to be really understood, about simply saying, what is my motivation in meditation? Or what is my spiritual work? What's the nature of it? Why am I doing this? Am I here to expand my ego and my personality, make myself more powerful? No, that to me is not my purpose. So it's just interesting to be aware of these different dynamics and potentials for transforming the personal self in your path going forward.
Okay, David. Michael and Tuya Robbins have their meditation coming up in just a couple of minutes.
Okay,
I'm going to read,
done.
yeah, I'm going to read one last comment from Jan, and then
Okay.
we'll need to end the meeting.
No problem.
And Jan writes, I was surprised for the union of the personality and the soul for joining partnership in overcoming the interfering thought patterns. That was nice. A working relationship rather than personality being vanquished.
Yeah, and understand that your personality has purpose, has very strong purpose, even though you may have all sorts of flaws and glitches and problems and issues with your personality, which other people may even tell you about, of course, or you may be aware yourself, things you're not necessarily proud of or interested in doing, but you want to transform these. That's the point. And so you want to transform into a more higher spiritual way. So where you, the soul, you become the soul, I am the soul of one, that you become more radiant. And you will become more radiant because you are focusing, and I hate to use the word channeling, but you're allowing your personality, your vehicle, your etheric body and personality and soul and emotions, you're allowing those to become a conduit for the soul energy. So let it be, we are.
Well, thank you, everyone. And I'm going to end the meeting now for everyone.
Okay, and I'll look forward to seeing everybody on December 12th. Thank you for coming.
Well, actually, Michael